Justice Wallace Jefferson said that, quote, criticism of the judiciary is an important right and even a responsibility. So we've taken him up on his invite today. My name is Craig McDonald. I'm Director of Texans for Public Justice. I'm joined today by a number of state leaders who have been working on judicial reform issues for some of us for many years. And each one will give a brief statement. And while each organization represented today might have a slightly different perspective, I think we all share the common perception that the state of the judiciary in Texas is at jeopardy, broken, unsound, and in need of fundamental reforms. Well, in less than an hour, Chief Justice Wallace Jefferson will deliver what will be his third biennial State of the Judiciary address. And if history is any guide at all, the Chief Justice will likely pronounce Texas courts to be strong, his descriptive term of choice for his previous two addresses. Regrettably, government reform and consumer organizations don't share the Chief Justice's characterization. In fact, we find the Texas Justice is profoundly broken and in need of fundamental overhaul. The elephant in the room, or maybe more appropriately, the elephant in the chamber next door, that the Chief Justice will not likely address is the nagging perception that justice remains for sale in Texas. The Chief Justice, I predict, will fail to address the continuing threat to one of the most basic rights for all persons, and that's the right to a fair hearing before a neutral body. If you're a consumer rather than an insurance company in Texas, the judicial system is broken. If you're an injured worker rather than an oil company, the system's broken. If you're a senior citizen and not a nursing home owner, the system is broken. If you're a homeowner rather than a home builder, the justice system in Texas is broken for you. Our groups just call on Justice Jefferson to first acknowledge what we believe is the biggest threat to justice in Texas. We hope he does it today. He's failed to do it in his previous addresses. Secondly, we call on the Chief Justice to make judicial selection reform the #1 priority for Texas courts. Because despite pronouncements to the contrary, the Texas judicial system will not be strong until our leaders get the money and the partisanship out of Texas courtrooms.
Thank you for coming today. The state of the Texas judiciary is predictable, but it is not strong. We are in a period where the highest courts in Texas offer predictability in the worst sense. If you are the little guy who suffered an injury, you must navigate a minefield just to have a chance at seeing justice done. Working people saw this first in the first opinion in the Energy versus Summers case. John Summers, the little guy, now deceased, but he will be remembered for having triggered a pull-out-of-the-hat decision that found that even though he was badly injured because of the company's negligence, and even though he was not employed at that company, he was struck with weak workers' compensation benefits instead of his day in court. A unanimous Texas Supreme Court wasn't prepared for the bipartisanship heat that resulted from this piece of judicial activism. So they're trying again, but with no guarantee that we won't reach the same conclusion again. Working people don't get much consideration on the Texas Supreme Court, certainly not as much as employers and fat cats. It is not just politics that caused this, but a poisoning of the well by money forces against people who face real injuries and simply want a day in court. Couple that with the Supreme Court, with the Court of Criminal Appeals, that has exalted the conviction process even when confronted by provable innocence. Sleeping defense lawyers, or in one case an effort to postpone an execution after 5 p.m. closing time. The Texas judiciary is a prime candidate for change. For those who seek justice, that change cannot come soon enough. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. My name is Maxine Martin, and I represent the League of Women Voters of Texas. The League is a nonpartisan organization whose membership will be celebrating our 90th year promoting good government. Of the 3 branches of state government, the judicial branch that affects the lives of millions of Texans seems to be the one that's least understood. The Texas judicial system has not changed since it was first established in the Texas Constitution in 1876. For example, Texas is one of 6 states that still elects judges by party affiliation. Party affiliation injects politics into the selection of judges. Special interests are contributing millions to candidates and political parties to try to influence judicial decisions. The cost of campaigning by the judges is skyrocketing, and there are misleading and partisan attacks on judges' decisions. Judges should be able to be independent, impartial, and uphold the law. Many Texans go through the courts every year. Judicial selection reform is needed to assure the public that the judicial system is fair, impartial, and non-political.
Thank you. My name is Alex Winslow. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Watch. We've been monitoring and reporting on the Texas Supreme Court for well over a decade now. And I'm sad to report that the state of our judiciary is in jeopardy. We've all heard about the ethics scandals surrounding the Texas Supreme Court. How can the public have real confidence in our court when 2 members of our state's highest court are facing ethics sanctions, and a 3rd is under investigation? I guess we shouldn't be surprised given the court's penchant for bailing out the same insurance companies and corporate wrongdoers who bankroll their campaigns. In case after case, the Texas Supreme Court decides with defendants over consumers and everyday Texans. In fact, the court's defendant win rate last year was a whopping 84%. What is just as troubling is the court's apparent disregard for the rule of law. Texans rightfully expect that our judiciary will rely on the law when making significant decisions that affect their lives. Apparently, this isn't always the case. Just last week, Chief Justice Jefferson spoke to a group in Vernon, and he said that cases before the High Court are complicated, and that sometimes they have to make up an answer. Make up an answer. Isn't that the definition of judicial activism? Isn't the job of our state's highest court to interpret the law as it's written? Making it up as they go along should never, ever be an option. The legislature can and should take steps to begin to address some of these problems. Currently, the U.S. Supreme Court is considering a case involving a West Virginia Supreme Court justice who, it is widely believed, was bought for an opinion. And here in Texas, we have cases like the Perry Holmes case and others. So it is time for the legislature to give careful consideration to requiring justices to recuse themselves from cases involving their donors. Also, just this morning, Senator Watson filed Senate Bill 780, which will require the court to make public their votes on what cases they decide to take. Currently, there's no way for the public to know which justices want to hear which cases. So opening up this process to public scrutiny would go a long way toward making the court's process more transparent. In short, the Texas Supreme Court is under a cloud that just seems to get darker by the day. And that cloud is threatening the public's confidence in our entire judicial system. We hope that the Chief Justice speaks to these concerns and others that the public has in his address today. So with that, I think we'll close and take any questions.